How's it going, guys? My name is Zach with the Movie Castle, and today we're going to be taking a look at Tales from the Darkside. This is Season 3, Episode 17, and this one's entitled Everybody Needs a Little Love. This is from February 22nd, 1987, and I can't help but wonder, February 22nd, just missed Valentine's Day by like a week and a day or something. Kinda wonder if this episode was supposed to go out a little bit sooner. Yeah, I don't know. This episode is directed by John Sutherland and stars Jerry Orbach and Richard Portnow. Jerry Orbach, you guys probably know from Law and Order. Law and Order, really long-running part on that show. And also, I remember him because John Mulaney had this bit about how he was an eye donor. Anyone remember that John Mulaney bit? Anyway, the teleplay was written by the episode's director, John Sutherland, and actually is based on a short story by Robert Bloch. That's pretty cool. Robert Bloch, most famous as the guy that wrote the original Psycho novel that Alfred Hitchcock would adapt into a very, very famous top 10 of all time horror movie. Now, we've also seen Robert Bloch adapted on Darkside before. He wrote the source material for A Case of the Stubborns, and while I do appreciate Bloch's work, A Case of the Stubborns is my absolute least favorite Darkside episode of all time. But that being said, I don't think it's indicative of all his stuff, and this episode is way, way better than A Case of the Stubborns, so don't worry about that. In this episode, there's two lonely divorced men. One of them steals a mannequin from his department store and takes it home and starts to treat it like it's his real wife. His friend says, "You shouldn't do that, it's not real, it's not really alive." Or is it? You know, this is Tales from the Darkside after all, and there's a lot of things to really like here. There's not actually as much mannequin horror as you'd think. It's one of those underserved subgenres, you know? Like, there's just, I mean, okay. If you guys have any good mannequin horror recommendations, you know, movies with a killer mannequin or people are getting turned into mannequins or something, let me know, because it's not done as often as you would think. We did get a little taste of mannequins earlier in the season with Miss Medusa, but that's it for Darkside and mannequins up to now. I also really like, this has a voiceover, and it gives the episode a strangely film noir feeling behind it. That's pretty cool and atmospheric, and towards the end we get some twists and turns with the plot. Those are pretty fun. But I do want to say, this really does feel like a Season 1 episode of Tales from the Darkside. The biggest defining factor that separates Season 1 from the other seasons of Darkside is Season 1, you had a lot of stories that were about people suffering and being oppressed by the world. It was a whole bunch of old, sad men, and, you know, like the guy that everybody thinks he's drinking again and he swears he's not. A painkiller, where the guy just is in chronic pain for no reason, you know? Yeah, there's a whole bunch there in Season 1 that are like that, where it's just the world screwing over some guy, and this really does feel like it. And overall, I don't want to say this episode's the best thing ever, it's not a Darkside classic or anything, but it does some cool stuff, it does mannequin horror, it has a good atmosphere and an interesting story, so not the best thing ever, but this is definitely one that I can see rattling around in people's heads. You know, I can definitely see a few people going, wasn't there that Darkside episode where someone was married to a mannequin or something and the mannequin looked just a little too real? yeah, I can definitely see some people getting freaked out by this. There is a little bit of uncanny valley here. Anyway, without further ado, let's talk a little bit about the plot. I'm not going to be doing any major spoilers. I'll be avoiding the end, but I do want to take a moment and analyze a few things here and there. So we will talk about the plot, but I won't talk about the ending. Anyway, we open up with these two guys at a bar. They're drinking buddies. They bond because they both have suffered a recent hard divorce. And the main guy, I think he sells like life insurance or something. So his whole job every day is thinking about death. And he's like, I just want to forget the world for a minute and enjoy myself. And the other guy starts talking about him being low on money. He says he has to pay so much to the wife, and he has to pay so much to the government, and he's like, you know, holding out a 20. He's like, this is all I got left for the whole week. Which, yeah, that sucks to be out of money. Yeah. But he makes this joke like, I got no food at home. I'm starving so much even the roaches left because there's no food here. Well, that does suck. But he starts to talk about the social aspect behind being single, the sort of social prejudices, and he's like, when you're single and you're by yourself, you get worse tables, people treat you less seriously, and, you know, you get sort of a stigma behind being just a lonely guy and not having a wife. Your married friends don't call you as much to hang out, and you're sort of seen as the outcast and put aside, which, another case of, boy, does that suck. And he says he's not ready to get married again, but he hates being single, and that he wishes there was a middle ground. Which I think would probably just be having a girlfriend. Just make sure that you're clear where your relationship is with each other and that you're not ready to get into anything too serious. But no, to him, he's not thinking a girlfriend. He has a different idea and says to his friend, come with me. Always a great sign. I got an idea. Let's go. Drunk ideas. Notoriously good, right? But it cuts to the two of them going back to his friend's place, and they've just stolen a mannequin from the department store that his friend works at. And he says, you know, that they'll talk to it. So they get drunk, and they start talking to it, telling it their stories, telling it a bunch of drunk jokes, and the narrator, the main guy, says, it was actually really nice having someone to listen to me, even though she wasn't real. Man, there's so many sad things in this episode. But after the night of drinking, some time has passed, and his friend invites him over to dinner. Well, turns out the mannequin is still there. He's been treating the mannequin like it was a real person, and his friend isn't sure how much he's given into the fantasy. You know, he'll try to say things like, oh, your wife isn't drinking with us tonight. But of course, he says, oh, no, she doesn't drink. Don't worry, she's not a prude, but she doesn't drink. And then, oh, isn't your wife going to eat with us? No, she eats like a bird. She's watching her figure. So he's trying to kind of dismiss any proof and just kind of trying to pretend that it's 100% real, but maybe it is more real than we think. The first time when the guy left, he caught a glance from the mannequin's eyes that seemed a little too real, and now during the second visit, he could have sworn the mannequin moved when he looked away and looked back. And plus, we know we're watching a horror anthology show. Yeah, there is some spooky parts here. So maybe. But of course, he's not going to be too quick to give in to the idea that it's anything supernatural, and thinks he just needs to snap his friend out of it. Hey, you're lonely, you've convinced yourself of something, we need you to take a step back and at least admit that it's a mannequin, right? And I think with Darkside, you know, like I said, they're a little bit ahead of their time a lot, you know. There's a few things, you know, like when, you know, Mookie and Pookie and they're, you know, putting an artificial intelligence into a computer. You know, there's quite a few episodes of Darkside that were ahead of their time, and I honestly think this is one of them, you know. We've gotten robots that look better and better. We've gotten that guy that married Hatsune Miku. You know, this is going to be one of those things that society will be debating in probably 5 or 10 years, the idea of synthetic partners, and here we are getting Darkside talking about it. No idea what society in 5 to 10 years will think of this episode, and hopefully we didn't say anything synthophobic or anything, but we'll just have to see, I guess. No idea what time will take us. But anyway, as far as the plot goes, I won't say anything too much farther. I will say the guy's relationship with the mannequin does get strained, and I will say there is a very good creepy dream sequence, and eventually the police will approach the guy and start to ask some questions, so something's going on here, and it does build to a pretty fun finale. Like I said, a few twists and turns along the way, a relatively good dark ending, and a few things that, especially during those last few minutes, that have you going, whoa, what exactly happened here? So, I did like that. You know, the narration / film noir aspect, the idea that these are a bunch of guys down on their luck, addicted to alcohol just to clear their mind of all their problems. A good, dark and moody episode, and as I said, we don't get much mannequin stuff. And that whole uncanny valley aspect where the mannequin looks almost human, and really good special effects. Whatever they did for the mannequin in this episode, which I think may have been a real person in a lot of the shots, but with just like maybe heavy paint or something. I'm not sure, but however they did the mannequin shots, some good stuff, really touching on that uncanny valley. So yeah, a pretty good episode. I can definitely see sticking with some people, even if it isn't the absolute best of Darkside. It's still really memorable, and much, much better than the last Robert Bloch. Much better than A Case of the Stubborns. Whew. Thank goodness for that. Anyway, to everyone who's watched so far, thank you for watching. To everyone who's liked and subscribed, thank you. You really are helping the channel out. I'll leave a relevant playlist on the bottom. This should be my Tales from the Darkside playlist, where you can see me review every past episode of this series. I also did a complete Season 1 and 2 overview, and I also covered the Clive Barker episode early, as well as the Joe Hill comic. So this playlist is getting pretty long. Anyway, have a good day. I'll see you guys again very, very soon. Darkside playlist on the bottom. Have a good day now.